Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a video that I've seen kind of going around the booktube community. I'm not entirely sure who started it, but I think it's great. And basically everyone is going to their read section on Goodreads and sorting it by rating from best to worst and seeing what Goodreads says is your best reads. We'll see if I agree with them. Surprisingly, Goodreads is right for some of them. Not all of them though. So let's get into it. My parameters. I love a set of parameters because otherwise I get overwhelmed. A lot of the books at the top were graphic novels. I've left those out because at least when I read graphic novels, I find that I rate them pretty high because they're normally pretty short. And unless there's something glaringly bad about it, I normally am relatively enjoying the book. So I've left out graphic novels. I've left out anything with less than 1,000 ratings because I feel like that's not really enough to get a good idea of what the actual rating is. I've not included more than one book in a series. So I've only included on the list the first one in that series that shows up. Like I think Stormlight Archive had more than one that were in the top, so I just included the first one that showed up. And then no nonfiction, because I feel like nonfiction is just a little different. Most of the nonfiction I read, at least, is normally like social justice and things like that, and I just feel like it's kind of weird to be like, Goodreads said this is good. Is it? Because like it's nonfiction. I don't know. To me, it's just weird, so I've left out nonfiction. So basically, these are going to be my top 15 books according to Goodreads. Let's get into it. I'm going to start from 15 up, and then we'll see what the number one book Goodreads says I've read is. So coming in at number 15 is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the third book in the Davabad trilogy. The rating for this is 4.51, which that's very high. So like the fact that there are 14 more books above this is kind of crazy. There are like 5 that tied with the exact same number. So do I agree with that? Abso-freaking-lutely. I love the Davabad trilogy and I feel like it's not talked about enough. I mean, there definitely are people talking about it. Like I'm not out here I'm not the only one championing this series, but it is so good. It is like this fantasy series that starts in Egypt and then goes to this magical city. There's so much magic involved. The characters are superb and it is just so beautiful. I love this series. The third one had me crying. I just think everyone should be reading this. It is a great fantasy series. It's adult fantasy. I just think more people should be reading it. It deserves the same respect as some of the big fantasy series. So go read this series. Next up, I have The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. If you've watched my channel, you know how I feel about The Name of the Wind. I think it's trash. And the fact that Goodreads has said, actually, you're wrong. It's not trash. It's the 14th best book you've ever read. So this book has 4.52 stars. This is the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles, which is kind of like this traditional fantasy story that follows this man who is telling his life story. He's like a bartender, and he's telling his life story from basically the beginning to this group of people at his bar. And we keep jumping from the past to the present, and it kind of has the trope of the unreliable narrator, so his story is kind of like fantastical and boring. It's bad. I really didn't like this book. I didn't like the main character, and since we're in his head the whole time, and since we're hearing this story from his point of view, I just thought it was so boring. I didn't like him. I didn't like the plot. I normally love a fantasy school setting, and there's a fantasy school in here. Didn't like that either. I just felt like this whole book was bad, and I've heard that the second one is also bad, and so like I'm like, why is everyone pumped for this third book? Why is this 14th on my list? Why? Make it make sense. Anyway, next up we have Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This one has 4.52 stars, and I say that's warranted. I loved this book. It is by the same guy that wrote The Martian, and it is this adorable sci-fi story that is like a space opera, which are my favorite sci-fis, and I always really want my sci-fis, I really enjoy hard sci-fi. I'm currently reading Seven Eves, and it is like very hard sci-fi. It's by Neil Stephenson, and it is like half of it so far has just been like them explaining how the science is working behind what they're doing, and I'm eating it up. Like, I just love astrophysics, I love astronomy, I just think space science is so cool. So Project Hail Mary I thought was really fun, but it was also like there were some like whimsical themes going through it, and there was like so many themes of like friendship and loneliness and just like so much stuff. I loved this book. So Warranted, I don't know if it's the 13th best book I've ever read, but it is incredible. So the high rating is warranted. Coming in at number 12 is The Last Olympian by Rick Riordan. This is the last book in the Percy Jackson series, the first Percy Jackson series, I should say. This one has 4.52 as well. So Name of the Wind, Project Hail Mary, and The Last Olympian all had 4.52. So they're all technically tied. And this one I understand. While I didn't give it 5 stars or 4 stars, I think I gave it 3, I didn't hate it. I'm just not the age range for it. I feel like a lot of people read this book when they were younger and then have reread it as adults, and so it's got this like a lot of nostalgia in it. And I've even seen some adults read it for the first time and still love it. I just have a hard time connecting with like younger stories, and that's nothing to say about the story. Like, I totally get the hype. I understand why people love this series. It just wasn't for me. I didn't connect with the characters, but I understand why it's on this list. I wouldn't say it's the 12th best book I've ever read, but I get it. I get why it's on this list. This also has like the magical school vibes, only it's like a magical summer camp. And it just kind of like follows these kids as they like defeat the bad guys with magic, but it's all based on like Greek mythology. So it's a really cool premise. I get it. Just not my cup of tea. Gonna cause some more drama. My last video I posted, I also ranted about Patrick Rothfuss and this next author, so I'm just stirring up the pot 2 videos in a row. So sorry everyone. The next book on the list, book 11, is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. This book has 4.54 stars. This is part of the A Song of Ice and Fire series. This is the 3rd one. The thing is, I read these a bit ago, so I don't remember what happens in each one. And I think I was still liking this series at the 3rd one. I think it was the 4th and the 5th one where I started to be like, what is going on? I'm not enjoying this anymore. Especially the 5th one. The 5th one I DNF'd. I only got halfway through it, and I was like, why? Why does this book exist? I thought it was boring. I think I was still okay with the series at this point. I would not say it's number 11 on my list, but I think I was still enjoying this. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the 2nd one was my favorite as I was reading. But again, it's been a bit since I read these. I read these probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And it was before I got into adult fantasy. So this was really like my first foray into adult fantasy. And the only reason I read them is because I had made new friends who were watching Game of Thrones. And it was when the last season was coming out. And I was like, let me try to slam all these books before this last season so I can at least watch that last season with them, because I didn't watch the TV show. And yeah, I didn't finish it. I did finish most of it. Like I got up through like halfway through the last one that's out. So I read most of it. I have some gripes with this series. I think so much of it is just like purely trying to capitalize on shock value, and it to me is just not warranted. Like, it stopped being shocking. I don't know. Maybe if I had read this before the series got huge and before there was all this hype, maybe I would like it more. But I went into it with some preconceived notions, and I went into it knowing that there were a lot of main character deaths, there was a lot of sex, there was like a lot of that stuff, and I think that going into it, it just like was not what I was vibing with. I wonder though if I had read this series when I was a little more acclimated to adult fantasy, like if I had read some other epic fantasies first and then got into this, like would I have liked it more? I don't know, because I feel like this is the wrong book to be your first adult fantasy series. Like these books are not the way to get into adult fantasy. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would have liked it better in a different life, but I'm not a huge fan of these books. Next up, with the same 4.5 star rating, another book that shouldn't be on this list. A House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. I've talked about my complicated history with Sarah J. Maas. I used to be a huge stan, loved her books, and then I became a little more educated and realized that a lot of the tropes she uses are incredibly problematic. But I still have been reading her new releases, and I read this one. I have a whole rant review that I'll link above. The first one, A House of Earth and Blood, I actually really enjoyed. It started off slow. There was a lot of info dumping. The world is very big, very complex. So I thought the beginning of that one was boring, but then the rest of it was so, so good. This one, on the other hand, first, it didn't need to be this long. It could have been this long. It didn't need to be this long. Too many POVs. Too many people I didn't care about. Too many people involved in all of the drama. And I just, go watch my rant review if you want to know why I didn't like this book. I'm going to continue on purely for the ending. If you know, you know. But again, I feel I have mixed feelings on how that book ended. It'll really depend on how the next book goes, because I think that the ending could be considered a money grab if the next book is bad. But anyway, this shouldn't be on my list. This is not the 10th best book I've ever read. It's not. So anyway, I will, spoiler for the rest of the video, all of her series are on this list. So that'll also, this list also shows some of the hype train. Like almost every book on this series, no, I would say every book on this series is a incredibly hyped book. They're all hugely hyped books. And a lot of times those big hyped books have higher ratings because they have fandoms. Like the Sarah J. Maas fandom will give her books 5 stars no matter what the book is, like no matter how good it is. Like the fact that people ate this up and gave it 5 stars is shocking to me, because I just find it to be, it had a lot of faults. So this series, that's why I think this video is so cool, is because you kind of get to see like the psyche of a reviewer. Like the books that they consider the best, are they really the best? Like is hype equal good? Anyway, let's move on. Next up is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is part of the Infernal Devices series. This one has 4.56. I read this series a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't remember which one Clockwork Princess is. Like, I don't remember the plot for that one specifically, but I remember the general plot of the Infernal Devices. And if I remember correctly, I would say the Infernal Devices is probably my second favorite out of all of the Mortal Instruments that I've read. I haven't read anything that's come out in probably 4 years. I found that I was not loving these books like everyone else was. I mean, there's the typical gripe with the first series of Mortal Instruments, like the weird incest plotline that turns out to not be incest, but is still weird. Like, that was in it. So, like, I didn't love that series. Infernal Devices was good. This is, like, the Victorian era one. So, this one was okay. Again, this is another example of the hype train. Cassandra Clare is a hugely hyped author. People eat up her books. People will read anything she writes and give it 5 stars. So, not my cup of tea, but I'm not surprised it's on this list. Next up, with 4.59 stars, this is the 8th book on the list, is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction set in World War II following these 2 French sisters. And I loved this book. I've tried reading some other Kristen Hanna books and didn't like them. I didn't like The Great Alone. I didn't like, what's the other one I read? I don't remember what the other one was I read, but there was another one I read that I also didn't like. So, historical fiction is just not my genre. I don't really like historical fiction. But this one, I loved. I read it in college one summer. I was like home alone for most of the summer because my boyfriend at the time, was working out of state, so I didn't see him for most of the summer, so I was just home alone, me and my dog. I read a lot. And read this one just because I think I just like saw it online or like on Goodreads or something and checked it out from my library, and I loved this book. I thought it was beautiful. I cried. I think it is a very good book. I wouldn't say it's the 8th best book I've ever read, but that's probably just because it's not the genre I typically read. So but a very good book. I get why it's on this list. Another hugely hyped author where people will just like read anything she writes and give it 5 stars. Next up with 4.6 stars, coming in at number 7 on the list, is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is the second book in the Bloodsworn saga. I just recently read this. It just recently came out. And I ate it up. I love this book. I've talked about it in a jillion other videos, so I won't get too far into it. But I get why this book's on this list. It should be on this list. This book is a masterpiece. Love this book. So this one I got. This one should have a high rating. I gave this 5 stars, so I'm one of the people bringing this rating up. So proud to bring that rating up. Next up is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This one has 4.61 stars, coming in at number 6. This is a contemporary YA, and we all know how I feel about YA and contemporary, and I still loved this book. I thought it was really beautiful. So I get why it's this high on the list. I, again, wouldn't say it's the 6th best book I've ever read, but that's, again, mostly because I would probably not have any contemporaries on the best list. That's just who I am. So anyway, I get why this book's on the list. It deserves 4.61 stars. It's incredible. Sabaa Tahir is another really huge YA author. She wrote The Ember and the Ashes series, which is a huge YA fantasy series. So again, not super surprised that her book has a high rating because she does have a big fandom, but this one is a different genre, so harder sell for people that are reading her books for the fantasy. So I respect it and I understand it. Coming in at 4th with also 4.61 stars, basically 3 through 6 all have 4.61 stars, so they're all kind of tied for 6. But coming in at number 5, according to Goodreads, is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I said that 3 of her series would be on this list, so not surprised. I am of the minority opinion in saying that I think Throne of Glass is a better series than akhtar. I also really loved akhtar when I first read it. Like, I get the hype. I just connected with the characters in Throne of Glass more. The series is way bigger than akhtar. It is 7 books, 8 books, not entirely sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 books, including the collection of short stories, collection of novellas, I guess I should say. This book I got when I was still part of the huge Sarah J. Maas hype train. It is the tour edition. It's signed by her. It's got this 2018 world tour. And when you go to a book tour, you get a book as part of your ticket price. Like, when you walk in, you're handed a book. At hers, there was 10 golden tickets within the books that gave you a pass to go be a VIP and get to meet her afterwards and get your book signed and take a picture with her and everything. I will throw the picture here really quick. You can see how awkward I am. So there's that. I can't talk to strangers. Anyway, I also got this book personalized. It says, "To Jordan XO Sarah." Anyway, so that was a pivotal moment in my life at the time. Huge deal for me. Anyway, as I've said, I'm not as big of a Sarah J. Maas stan anymore, but I get why these books are on this list. Like, it makes sense. Now, is this the best book in the series? Absolutely not. This one should not be higher than the rest. I would say the best one is probably Empire of Storms. That one, it was just really good. And this one, I felt like I have mixed emotions about how the series ended. She's not doing a great job of like sticking the landings. Granted, I think that the ending of what we thought was the ending of akhtar was pretty good, but now she's like writing more akhtar stuff, so it's not over. The last book that I just read of Crescent City, not so good, but that's also not the end of the series. But this one, it left me wanting. I didn't love the ending. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. So there we are. Next up, we have Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. Got the sprayed edges. It's the only book I have that has sprayed edges. This book has 4.61 stars as well, and I get it. I am on the Leigh Bardugo train. I get it. I have the same opinions as most people, so I'm not going to get too far into it because you've all heard it if you've heard about her books. I thought that the Shadow and Bone series was weaker. It had some merits, but it really, for me, was just a setup of the world. However, the show, killing it. This duology, though, is incredible, and I really want to do a reread of it because I've only read it once. This book I read in like 2 sittings and sobbed at the end. It was so beautiful. I love these characters. It's got one of my favorite tropes of found family, so I'm almost guaranteed to like a book with found family, so I love this book. So I get why it's on here. I don't know if I would say it's the 4th best book I've ever read, but it would probably be in the best read list for sure. At number 3 with 4.61 stars again is Akhtar. This is the 2nd book in the Akhtar series. For anyone that doesn't know or doesn't follow Sarah J. Maas, Akhtar is A Court of Thorns and Roses. So this is the 2nd one in the series, and I get why this is the most popular of the 3. I would probably agree it's the best of the 3. I didn't realize that mine was water damaged. What happened here? Anyway, this series, I have mixed feelings on it again because I thought it was over and now she's continuing. So I have mixed feelings on it because I just get frustrated when any media drags on. Like, end it at a good place. Don't just keep dragging on. Like, this is her most popular series, obviously. It's 3rd on my list. To me, it just feels like she's like, well, everyone loves these characters, so if I keep pumping out content of these characters, people will eat it up, and people will read my books because they love these characters. And, like, they will. You'll make the money, but is the content you're putting out good? Some of it is, but her books are huge, too. Like, the newest one, A Quarter Silver Flames, is also in this series. It's huge. It's mostly a romance book. So why is it so big? Like, I enjoyed it, but it could have been half the length. I don't know. I just have mixed feelings on Sarah J. Maas lately, but this book is 3rd on my list, I guess. I would not say it's the 3rd best book I've ever read, but I get it. I like Throne of Glass better, even though there's also quite a bit of problematic tropes in that one. So that's why I've kind of jumped off this hype train. I have jumped off mid route. I'm rolling through the grass like in Anastasia, the animated movie. People have showed me that, hey, these books, did you notice this? When I read these for the first time, no, I didn't. Not on this hype train anymore. Not surprised all 3 of her series are on my list. It is what it is. 2nd, coming in at 4.7 stars. A huge jump considering from 3 to 15, there's only a 0.1 change. The bottom one was 4.51. The 3rd one was 4.61. Now we're jumping all the way to 4.7. It's Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. This is the last book in the Greenbone Saga and the best book in the Greenbone Saga. This book is phenomenal. The last video I posted that was reading 1-star reviews of my favorite books. I tried to look at 1-star reviews of Jade Legacy. There was only 2 with an actual review. The rest were just star ratings. And one of them had spoilers, so I couldn't read it. And the other one was super long, so I didn't want to read it for that video. But there were 2 1-star reviews that had actual reviews out of all of the people that have read this book. Granted, I don't think there's as many ratings for this book as, like, say, Game of Thrones or something, but still, impressive. This book is a masterpiece. It is the best ending to a series I've ever read. Up there in my favorite series of all time. This book is fantastic. If you like fantasy, if you don't like fantasy, like, just go read this book. It is phenomenal. Incredible characters. There's morally gray characters. The magic system is awesome. There's politics. It's just so cool. Like, just go read this series. It is so, so good. Coming in at 4.75 stars with 266,456 ratings, which, if you are not a Goodreads connoisseur, is a lot. That is a lot of ratings. And its average rating is 4.75 stars. Wild. It's Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 2nd book in the Stormlight Archive. I'm going to start talking a little faster because the sun is setting and it's getting dark in here. I can see. that it is getting dark, so I'm sorry if the lighting's getting weird. But anyway, this book was really good. I don't know if it was my favorite of the 4. It's hard really to say what my favorite of the 4 is because I liked them all for different reasons. Love this series. I get why it's up here. I don't know if it is my number 1 series of all time. It's not done with yet. But it is in my top series of all time. Like probably top 5 maybe? I'm not totally sure. I'd have to like sit down and think about that. But it is an incredible series. It is so good. They are chunky. This is a mass market paperback, and I was dumb for getting the mass market paperbacks because like look at how you have to hold it. Like it is impossible to hold. This one's a little worn now because I've read it once, but like your hand starts to hurt. It's not an enjoyable experience. It is very good. Worth the hype. Read this book, read this series, read Brandon Sanderson. I just thought it was so wild that this book has over 250,000 ratings and is rated 4.75. Like, how can you, how? There's always dissenters. And still, that is just a wild margin. And I get it. These books are huge. These books are huge physically and in the book community. So I get it. Do I think that Words of Radiance was the best? I'm not sure. I think I read all these back to back, so it kind of like blends together for me which one was which, but I liked them all. There's not one of them that I was like, this one was boring. I liked them all. So excited for that 5th one. So that is all of the best books I've ever read according to Goodreads. Most of these I actually would say are incredibly good books, but some of them not so much. I think that this video concept is a really cool exploration into just like readers in general and the book community and how huge certain things can be, like how huge fandoms can be. And yeah, I get it. This list makes sense to me. Even if I don't agree with some of them, it makes sense to me. I get it. So here we are. I thought that was super fun. I love looking at stats and stuff like that, so it was really cool to like go through this list and see what Goodreads said was my favorite. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what Goodreads should have put up at the top. Let me know what your number 1 book according to Goodreads is. I would love to hear that. Put that in the comments down below. What Goodreads says is your favorite book of all time or your best book of all time. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy my content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I post a video. Your support, as always, means the world to me, and until next time, thank you guys.